So today I'm going to continue talking about Vacations and the discography that helped them blow up. I'll be covering their two latest albums, Changes and Forever in Bloom. First, let's talk about Changes and how this album really refined Vacations' music and led them to the song that blew them up on TikTok. I'll start off by comparing this album to the previously discussed EPs, Days, Friends, and Vibes, and then my perspective of the album. First off, Vacations really refined their sound here. It just sounds more polished. They dropped the feeling that they had on their previous EPs where everything sounded rougher and more garagey. The percussion instruments also sound a lot less harsh. There's more of an atmospheric feeling to these songs, and this is even further noticed in their next album, Forever in Bloom, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, so some info. Vacations were actually the ones who mixed this album, and specifically it was Campbell and Nate. There was more of a collaborative effort for mixing here than on the previous EPs where songs were just recorded. This album was also taken more seriously due to the internet traction that they started gaining around this time. This album tackles the theme of change, just like the title says. It tackles growing up and dealing with the online recognition that they were starting to gain around this time, and also their personal growth, like in the song Moving Out. The songs also feel more lyrically fleshed out than before, and there was more care put into this album compared to the previous EPs where songs were kind of just recorded. Songs were sometimes rewritten and had their structure changed as well. According to Campbell, some of the musical inspirations for this album were Steve Lacy, Porches, Always, it's two V's but it's pronounced Always, and Australian bands such as Morning TV. Alright, so let's get started with the first track of this album, Anything Could Happen. So this track has an ambiance to it, thanks in part to the ambient pad that you can hear in the track. It adds an airy, dreamy feeling to the song, which really helps with the lyrics. The concept of change can really be heard in this first track, as the lyrics talk about how so much has happened in such a short time. In this song, it seems that Campbell is talking about a period in his life where he's just growing up and a lot of stuff is going on. The mystery of what's next is, well, a mystery, but it's also exciting. This song could also be referring to the popularity that they were starting to gain on the internet from their Days and Vibes EP, but I kind of want to side with what I think for this song. Alright, so On Hold. With On Hold, we're greeted by a rather downbeat track. There is some harmonizing coming from overlapping guitar riffs at some points in the song, which then lead to a bittersweet sounding guitar riff. In this track, the lyrics talk about focusing so much on something that you don't have, but when you finally get it, it's nothing, just empty. You were so absorbed by something that you put your life on hold for it. And after realizing that, you're kind of just left with dealing with the feelings from realizing the truth. That, getting to that point wasn't really worth it. It was just more of an illusion. Moving Out. In this song, Campbell is describing his experience with moving to his own place. At first, the house seems like a mess that's falling apart. Shortly after, doubt also starts to set in, but Campbell knows that the change is necessary, and that the feeling will eventually fade away someday. Eventually, Campbell starts to feel like his new place is a home, even with all of its flaws. Another note about this song is that it was actually written about 6 months after Campbell moved out and started living on his own. Telephones. When I first heard this song, I really thought that this was a post-breakup kind of song. There was a lot of things that were mentioned in the lyrics that really made it seem that way, but this song is actually about phone addiction. And it's kind of ironic for this to be the song that blew up on TikTok, as it's covering, phone addiction, and TikTok is kind of an addiction kind of thing, right? So in talking about the production side of things for this song, according to Campbell, this was actually the most layered song on Changes. The mixing is done really well, and the drums sound pretty full, but they also keep their own space at the same time. On the lyrical side of things, the song leaves you with food for thought in such a way that you could interpret it in a couple of ways. So, some of the ways including the actual meaning, which is about cell phone addiction, or the other meaning, which I thought was what the song was about at first, heartbreak. There's lyrics that can really be understood in two ways, such as this one. Alright, so let me explain why this song is actually about phone addiction. In a Serial and Sounds interview, Campo actually mentioned that the song was based on how he would stay up too late before bed and just scroll through the Instagram Explore page during a period in which he was feeling down. One of the lyrics also mentions how something shines so bright. In this case, it's literally a phone screen and not some metaphorical person. Honestly, the song makes you feel kind of sad and reflective, and TikTok really ran with that. While a lot of the edits using this song are heartbreak related, I mean, you've got people using edits of, I don't know, The Simpsons or stuff like that. A couple of them are just sad stuff in general. I think there was also Spider-Man in it, like, what, with Mary Jane and you know, Peter Parker. There's been a lot of edits with this song. I'm pretty sure you've seen them. Club Social. So Club Social kind of builds on the whole cell phone thing from the last track, which I find is a nice touch to have these two songs to have these two songs back to back pretty much. Except it focuses more on the social media aspect of things. In this track, Campo talks about the highs and lows of reading through the band's social media page, and this track seems to be talking about the praise and hate that they're getting from their newfound popularity. Production-wise, you can hear some subtle vocal harmonizing sometimes, which is really a nice touch. Steady. For the production of this track, the guitar riff has a pretty nice fade in the beginning. This nicely transitions into the riff that is used for the rest of the song. At the midway point of the song, there's also a pretty dope solo that introduces a new guitar riff into the track. On the lyrical side of the song, Campo is talking about how he has someone who just stops him from falling. He has someone who's his rock pretty much. Honey. On my first listen, this track really got me with the intro riff. It just felt really groovy and different than the other riffs used in the tracks. It's a loud and impactful start to the song, and the drums on this track support the riff and the fast pace of the song. There's also this really dope saxophone ending to the song, which is another reason why I got hooked onto this song. Overall, I really like the production on this song. On the lyrical side, Campo is singing about an event that reminds him of his previous mistakes, and there's even a method of miss and sing, and I feel like I really butchered that. But yeah, that really gives this song the feeling that it's like some kind of play or act. Soft. The song loosely continues the topic of hate that was previously explored in Social Club. It talks about standing your ground and not being soft. On the production side of things, the vibe of the instrumental makes you feel like you're going through a couple of challenges and working things out. And I know that sounds like a really weird thing to say, but I mean, I don't know, I kind of heard that when hearing this song. It's a combination of the riff that's going on and the chords, and it kind of just feels that way. And I guess that fits with the theme of standing your own ground in this song. Be there. So this song was actually on the Friends EP that I covered in the first video I did on vacations, which you should really go check out after this video if you haven't yet. The production really got reworked here, and it sounds way more full, and there's a lot more vocal harmonizing than before. The drums also sound different, and there's some really nice background vocals at the end of the track. In retrospect, this is the final track on the album, and it sounds like a reflection on everything that's happened. The lyrics can be split into two parts. The first part talks about someone prior to going through changes, while the second part is the aftermath of the changes that occurred. In the second part, the aftermath is described almost like a reptile shedding its skin. Alright, so if you made it this far in the video, don't forget to subscribe. Alright, so I'm actually going to talk about the album cover first. And I mean, just at a first glance, you see two people and they kind of have, they're like flower heads matching the whole spring theme that I'm going to talk about a little bit. And you kind of notice that they're, I guess, watering grass with a bunch of stars, and the mountains are in the background. And I mean, it's special. I mean, even the background of the album it's like crumbled up paper, so it's just got a unique aesthetic. And I guess the crumbled paper matches the fact that the flower people kind of look like they're kind of cutouts from other textures. Like if you look at the pink shirt, I guess you could say it's almost like it's petals really, but they kind of cut out a certain part that would like look like it's in the shape of a shirt. And you can kind of see the same thing with the red shirt as well, and I think even in the pants too, looking at that, and even the shoes as well, it's like a different texture. So overall, I mean, it's just got this kind of artsy, crafty, kind of springish vibe to it. And it's funny, like I feel like this is it's like a really good album cover because it's spring, right? But then when you start listening to the actual album, you also get that same vibe. Like they changed the vibe from a picture into the actual sound, which I kind of find that pretty fascinating in my opinion. But yeah, let's actually get into the actual, the actual songs. So one of the things about this album that I also feel like I need to point out is how on point the transitions are from track to track. And each track really just flows so well into the next one. And the album feels experimental too. It feels more poppy at times than indie rock, which is a pretty cool change. The deeper you get into the album, the more you notice this direction. It kind of gets groovier and synthier. And personally, I like the second half of the album the most. It feels like there's really something new that is being tried out here. And I'd also say that this is probably my favorite album from Vacations. Alright, so Floraison. This track really sets up the tone of the entire album. It has such a huge effect on creating the atmosphere for the album. And it feels very springy and fresh, just like the album cover. It kind of feels like you're wandering around some luscious mountain range, enjoying the nature around you. This track shows how Vacations has changed sonically from their previous works. And an additional note, originally Vacations wanted to start the album with the next track, Seasons, but they felt that doing that would have been too much of an abrupt jump since the next track has a very drummy intro. Alright, Seasons. This track is loud, it's punchy, and it's incredibly upbeat. It makes sense why this wasn't the first track on the album. It just sounds really full and alive. There's counter riffs, great drumming, and even a saxophone. And I'm a simp for saxophone, so that's an incredibly nice touch. The track was kind of loosely based on the first few days when they were in France for the tour. With that context, the lyrics seem to be talking about a new experience, which in this case would be them touring through France. Alright, Lavender. Lavender keeps the energy from the last track while also having calmer moments at certain points, which helps things cool down a bit. This track seems to be talking about making a choice that you don't regret, and you really want to show someone the results of that choice, but you can't quite show them yet. This track was also their first single of the album. Alright, Actors. This track uses the soundstage really well, and there's times where you can just hear instruments panning around you in different places. The plucking keys at the beginning are a nice touch, and there's even some bells that add more depth to the song. The soft instrumental part of the song, which is kind of like a bridge, is also really nice. The synths used in this track were also inspired by Porches and involved messing around with the Juno 106 VST. According to an LDL interview, this song is actually about imposter syndrome and is based off of a festival in Bangkok, in which Vacations have to play after Slowdive, who are a huge inspiration to Campbell. So ultimately, that led him to feeling like an imposter. Alright, Time Crisis. The song seems to be talking about going through a tough, unfamiliar event that they need someone to go through with. However, this song is loosely based on the arcade game Time Crisis 2, and an experience that they had with it at a bar. They were trying to finish the last level and needed a couple of gold coins, so they kind of just ran around the bar, just trying to find, some coins to finish it, and that was pretty stressful. Honestly, I never thought that the song was actually written about something like that, so I kind of find that funny. Alright, Glow. So this is actually the first love song that Campbell has written, which is nuts because a lot of the other songs Vacations makes sound like love songs. Sonically, the soundstage on this song is used pretty well, and the drums and hi-hats are panned pretty well as well. Alright, Panache. This song actually has two features and sounds even more different than the other tracks on this album when compared to the previous Vacations EPs and albums. It feels more poppy than the other tracks and shows a lot of experimentation. The features on this album are Sarah Sykes from the Sydney band Sunscreen and Crater Face, which is actually a hip-hop duo, and they kind of remind me of Brockhampton a bit, R.I.P. Brockhampton, but yeah. This song was also one of the first demos for Forever in Bloom. It wasn't originally going to make the cut, but Jake kept on bringing up having the song. Campbell eventually rewrote the song with a few weeks to spare before going to the studio, and boom, we got Panache. The lyrics of the song are actually touching on Campbell's journey in the music industry and the people that he's encountered there, and how some of them don't really do what they say. Alright, something here. This track also feels different from the other works as well, with a more poppy and groovy direction. This direction is something that you can hear more and more as you get deeper into the album. There's also more of a focus on the synths here at times. The high notes of the vocals, I guess you could say they're a falsetto, are pretty good. The lyrics are basically about finding solace in the fact that anything could happen. Also, fun fact, this song was actually written in a different time signature of 2/4. A lot of music is typically written in 4/4, so this is a pretty cool change. Ego. This track feels pretty staccato-y at times, especially with the bass that feels like it's jumping around. The song eventually hits the point where it explodes into a bunch of instrumentation with a riff that accompanies it. Drums too. Fun fact, this song was actually the hardest song to write on the album. It went through more than 10 revisions. The lyrics of this track seem to discuss acting tougher than you really are and how that's kind of gonna end up badly. Alright, Peaches. This track changes the pacing and energy from the previous track. It's more calm and lush at times, but it has its moments where it gets more energetic and jumpy. You can definitely tell that the synths are more incorporated in this track, as you can hear a lot of plucking and atmospheric sounds in the background of the track. Once again, that falsetto goes hard in the outro of the song. This might be a reach on what the track is actually about, but Campbell could be doubting if his charm is running out. The song mentions how he's dancing with his reflection and mentions how the script is feeling worn out, and how your charm has lost its spark. I'm guessing he's talking about his reflection's charm maybe? Kind of a wild guess, but that's what I think. Alright, Avalanche. Yep, this track continues a daring trend that is happening on the second half of the album. It just feels different from other albums, it's more groovy. Even though the guitar is more present in this track than in some of the other tracks, it's got that poppy boldness of some of the other tracks. Honestly, I can only think of one thing that these lyrics are talking about going wrong, like an avalanche. Alright, Wildflower. I really like the birds in the intro of this track. It's a nice touch and adds to the whole springy vibe the album has, and even fits in well with the title of the track. You kind of feel the nature from this track. This track feels like a perfect setup to the end of the album. And that brings us to Take Care. So you know how a lot of albums have that one beautiful track in them? Like with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, you have Runaway. Well, this is that track. This track feels like you're looking back at something almost, right before it's about to end. Kind of like you're a senior who's about to graduate from school and are looking back at the past couple of years in some coming of age film or something like that. Or maybe just some good moment in your life that you're thankful for but is about to end. It's just really got that reminiscent vibe to it. You honestly have to listen to it to experience it.